Anyone opposed? Yes, I look at myself. That motion is carried. And the board meeting minutes of March 24th have been received. If there are no errors or omissions, we will just proceed. We need documents here. Is that correct, or are we just?
Yeah, they did not go to any other board.
Okay.
This is the only one.
All right.
Yeah, so I move we adopt and circulate.
Okay, moved by Director Jackman, seconded by Director Schnee. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. So we'll move into our delegation. So Todd, if you would like to get started. Thank you for joining us. So we'll have the capital funding request for the Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital MRI expansion project.
Thank you, Chair Hewitt. Good evening, directors. I will share my screen here. Christine, is that okay? And I'll walk us through the slides. Is that?
Yes, please.
Great. I'll do that. Okay. And Chair Hewitt, I will walk us through the this presentation, and then maybe at the end, Lannon will help me or help us out in terms of a bit more of a clinical view of the MRI project, and then we'll go to questions, and then after that, Lannon will have a clinical operations update that he'll provide to the board as well. And Chair, just looking a little further down on the agenda, under item 7.6, our Interior Health Capital Projects and Planning Status Report Update, there are a couple items that I would like to just note for the board when we get to that item. So if you'd allow me to jump back in shortly when we get to 7.6, I can. There's a couple items of note for the directors.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. So let's go to hang on. So I will go to the second slide and start by land acknowledgement. Interior Health would like to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Dekaldanay, Tunaka, Ninkalketma, Shikwepnam, Statliam, Silix, and Chilcote nations, where we live, learn, and collaborate together. So a bit of a background, directors, on this project. It is the replacement of the mobile MRI that has been located at Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital for, I think, about 4 years now. The mobile MRI itself is almost 20 years old. Initially, the mobile MRI moved between Penticton, Trail, and Cranbrook on a weekly rotation of 2 weeks in Penticton, 1 week in Trail, and 1 week in Cranbrook. In the last few years, permanent MRI units have been constructed at both Penticton Regional Hospital and East Kootenay Regional Hospital, and since that time, the mobile MRI has been used in essence as a permanent MRI at KBRH. The mobile MRI is approaching its end of life. We've upgraded it several times over the 20 years, upgraded software and some of the moving parts, as well as at times had to upgrade the trailer that it's located within. But it is now time to move to a permanent MRI at KBRH for the West Kootenay Boundary region. So the plan would be for a building expansion at KBRH for a new permanent MRI and the suite and services that would go around it. The expansion would be on the ground floor, adjacent to the existing medical imaging department, and I've got a slide coming up showing where that would how that would look at the site. The size of the expansion, 482 square meters, or around 5,200 square feet, with a full basement below it for the mechanical systems. With the new permanent MRI, I've got highlighted there in green. Directors, I didn't include this next bullet in the package that went out with the agenda, but it is important to note that with the permanent MRI, we'll be able to increase our annual number of scans from approximately 4,400, which we're doing right now, up to 7,000. A combination of increased efficiency, newer equipment, so quicker exam time, as well as extending our hours to maximize the use of the device. The plan would be to run the new MRI in the new location 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that would allow us to approximately increase our exam volume by 60%. Also part of the project is upgrades to the parking areas at KBRH. And directors, just so we're all aware, we have full approval from the Ministry of Health on this project to proceed. We'll be working on an announcement is in the works between the Interior Health and Ministry of Health Communication staff, and they will be in contact with your RHD staff, Chair Hewitt, on the particulars around the release and the event itself. Overall objectives, so looking to support growth in this area over the next 20-year time frame. So that 60% increase in exams comes in this area. Optimize operational efficiencies. So the new device more efficient because it's newer technology and in a much more suitable environment than the current trailer parked adjacent to the building. We'll be providing a quality product with a new device that meets all the clinical standards, and I'll be touching on some of those around the design and the kind of the separation of areas. Again, it's a magnet that we are using, and it does come with some risks around it, and trying to manage the risk and on the budget side as we move forward as well. So this is a schematic of the, or not a schematic, an actual site plan for Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital. So this is the main building here. Over here where my cursor is, I hope I'm not moving too fast, directors. That was the new emergency area. This would be the Poplar Ridge long-term care on the left-hand side. In black, where we've got the black hashtagging here, this is the current medical imaging department. In orange, this is the existing MRI mobile trailer that is, again, permanently parked there. And in red, with the dotted area, this is the area where we're looking to build the new 5,200 square foot department and expand the building. I'm trying to walk us through what the interior design would look like. So in red here, this is the current exterior wall of KBRH and the medical imaging department. So in black, this is the new construction that will be built adjacent to the building. Access to the new department from within KBRH will be down in the bottom right corner with the a waiting area and then a reception booking area, and then moving through a set of double doors into this area here for the patients to get changed, to get ready for the exam. So zone one would be really the areas of patient registration as well as kind of the departmental supplies furthest away from the effects of the magnet. Zone two would be where the patients would be, in essence, getting ready for prepping for the exam, as well as when they come out, the recovery areas. They would then move through another set of double doors where they would be in essence, waiting to go into the exam. So this would actually be normally not more than one patient waiting to go in while a patient is currently in the MRI room. So this pink area, zone 4, which is the most, again, where you are in that magnetic zone, having the exam. Here is the exam device, the gantry, and so forth. Above here would be the MRI control room. So this is where the staff running the equipment would be, as well as in the back here, we'd have offices for our radiologists, our booking staff, and our department leaders. After the exam, the patient would then move out through the top area over into this blue shaded section as well, where they would be, in the recovery area with staff in this alcove area, this nursing station, monitoring them until they're ready to be discharged from the department. And then they would again leave through the same way they came in. Chair, directors, again, so this is that approximately 5,200 square foot expansion that would be on the edge of the current imaging department at KBRH. So in terms of the looking at the site again after the expansion, so this orange area here would be where the footprint of the expanded area. As part of this, directors, we are going to lose some parking stalls because that currently is a parking area. Approximately 14 stalls will be lost. Those stalls are currently used for our senior and accessible parking areas, so that will relocate up against this bank. So still as close as we can get to the front door of the hospital. We'll lose some parking during construction. And over here on the side of Poplar Ridge is going to be temporary loss of parking. This is where we are going to relocate the mobile MRI during the approximately 3 years that we will be under construction. We cannot be without MRI services for that long at a regional hospital. And the other thing to note, directors, is we will not actually be relocating the existing mobile MRI unit there. We cannot get another 3 more years out of it. So we will be purchasing a new mobile MRI fully funded by the province to be located here during the construction construction timeline. Afterwards, that mobile MRI will be relocated elsewhere in Interior Health to provide services to other communities. If we go back to parking for a sec, directors, we'll be losing 14 stalls here. Our plan is to add between 19 and 23 stalls through various parking lot upgrades, which will include paving of the full parking lot at KBRH. As we know, a significant portion of it over here is currently gravel. We're going to be looking to add some parking on the lower bench, as well as seeing what we can do along the upper bench to add more stalls. But we believe, in using a parking consultant, we can get from 19 to 23 additional through paving, more efficient use of the space that we have, as well as some parking lot expansions on both the lower and upper bench. So in terms of a project timeline, looking to start the design process in August of 2024. Design will take us roughly 18 months and to go from design and go through the procurement process, and with a goal of having a general contractor procured by February of 2026, with construction starting in July of 2026 and being completed roughly 24 months later in June of 2028. How are we going to procure this project? It is a design bid build methodology where Interior Health will work with engineers and architects to come up with a full design on our own, and then take it to tender for a contractor to do the construction work. The capital cost, $35.9 million, directors, for this project, and our request to this board is for $14.4 million. Directors, we're also working with the Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital Foundation for Health on their participation in this project. We're still in discussions with them, but they are very keen, very willing and open and wanting to be a partner with it. As we work through the design stage over the next 18 months, we'll work with them to firm up that commitment and bring that information back to the board as we progress. Before we go to questions, Lannon, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of this project before we open it up to the directors for their questions?
I think you did an excellent job at providing an overview. One of the clinical gains that we will see as a result of having a permanent structure is the opportunity for bed-bound patients located at KBRH to receive medical imaging here. Currently, it's a real struggle because of the setup in the trailer. So there will be definite gains in addition to what Todd has already mentioned with respect to increasing the patient population that we can use the new facilities for. Thank you.
Thank you, Lannon. Chair Hewitt, is there any questions from the board for Lannon or I on this project?
Director Jackman in the room has a question. And also I see your hand, Director Marino, but if you could please use chat if that's possible in future, but I do know you. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd. And I know the item comes up again later, but I wanted to note now because the letter from the CFO is indicating that they're only looking for 13.945 from us, the less than 40%, $500,000 discrepancy. Were they anticipating Hospital Foundation money might go in before our 40% is calculated, like come off the total? And I will also note it was really appreciated to see that cash flow breakdown year by year as you requested. That's really nice. But there's a little discrepancy, about $500,000 between the two asks.
Yes, directors, and my apologies on that. It is related to working with the foundation and what we believe they may come in at. So yes, it should be the 13.945, which is less than 40% of the total. We will update so that is what we're looking for support for on the bylaw today, and we will be bringing back updates in terms of our progress with the foundation on their contribution towards the project. That's the reason for the difference. The 13.945 is less than the traditional 40%. My error in not ensuring my slide deck was matching to that letter at the end. My apologies on that, directors.
Did you have a supplemental?
Well, no, just so we get the right number in the bylaw. Thanks.
All right, then Director Marino has a question.
Yes, and it's in the chat, but just a question about the 16 hours per day. Will you have to have more staff on board to do that?
Absolutely. We'll have to recruit additional MRI techs, Director Marino, to get to a 16-hour-a-day service. We do have time to get there, and hopefully well ahead of the 2028 opening, we have all our staff in place so that we can go to 16 hours as soon as possible. But we will need to recruit for that.
Yeah, just one more question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So the parking lot, is that going to be paid before they start moving the MRI?
So that part I do not know at this time, Director, in terms of when we'll have that built into our overall project schedule. I do not think we will do it before we actually, in essence, break ground and work on getting the new structure in place. But in term, just with all the work that will have to happen on site, moving services and so forth, we wouldn't want to pave and then have to dig it up afterwards. I could get back to you at the next meeting, or maybe back to your staff with an estimate on when we would actually do the parking work in terms of scheduling around the new construction that would have to take place beforehand.
Okay. It's just that if you're going to pave the far end of the parking lot, it's going to be out of the way of any construction with the MRI. And it'd be nice to have before we start moving things around. Anyways, just a thought.
Director Lockwood.
Thank you. And through the chair to Todd, you say that we have the portable new MRI for 3 years. Is it, if there's an overrun, is the province already promised it to go somewhere else, or do we get it until the job is completed?
The mobile MRI will definitely need to stay at KBRH until the new MRI is complete, up and running and operational. We cannot be without MRI services at KBRH for any amount of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I actually have two questions. One being in the interim, when you're using the mobile MRI, where will that be placed as you're constructing if you have to use it?
Yes. So again, the mobile MRI will be located adjacent to Poplar, Poplar Ridge on that far side of the hospital campus. A little more out of the way than it is currently, but it is our options are limited in terms of a temporary relocation of the mobile MRI during construction.
Thank you. And supplement to that, or another question, does that hospital yet have a secondary road in and out on that site?
It does not. We would love to have one, but it does not.
Is that a concern to IHA for emergency purposes?
There have been discussions in the past with the City of Trail on a second access road. Lannon, in terms of the concern around operations, could you maybe help us on that one?
To the chair, yeah, my pleasure. The short answer is we continue to work with the city with a request to construct the secondary access to the campus, and those conversations continue.
Thank you.
Great. Does anyone else have questions? And thank you, Director Davidoff, for letting us know that you're here. There are no other questions. I have a couple of them. First is, when will the new mobile MRI be on site? Can it be put into use now or as soon as it's been acquired, rather than waiting until we're right in the construction phase?
Sure. We are working through procurement of it now, so going to tender. The other thing that'll have to happen for its temporary location next to Poplar is get the services there that we need. So there's going to be some power, telecommunications, and actually getting the ground prepped for it as well. So I believe that will not happen till next summer. It'll take us that long to procure and to prep that new spot for it.
Thank you. And my next question is, will the temporary unit result in increased capacity over the current temporary unit?
That part I would have to follow up on. Or Lannon, do you have any further information on that?
I don't know about the temporary increase or change in our capacity.
I'll have to get back to you and or to your staff on that one, Sherhua.
All right. So yeah, if there's a possibility to increase the staff while the temporary unit is in place. If it's a brand new unit, there doesn't, well, to me, seem like there would be anything precluding you from using it to more effect. But yes, I would appreciate you getting back to staff on that. All right. Then are we ready for Lannon's update on clinical operations?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to share 4 points with the directors this evening. First is work around seasonal extreme weather. This is a provincially driven activity that health authorities in conjunction with municipalities and regional districts have a responsibility for, to ensure that there are plans in place for extreme heat and extreme cold. There have been meetings throughout the spring with our health emergency management team, our medical health officers, and public health in coordination with city staff and regional district staff in order to ensure that there is a clear understanding around the approach and expectations that government has through the provincial task force around extreme weather management. And those are going exceptionally well. So my appreciation to the staff of the districts and municipalities for participating and working to create the best readiness that we can have in the event of extreme weather that may occur this summer. In addition to that, and linked, is the work that the Health Authority does on an annual basis with respect to fire preparation. The clinical operations teams with our health emergency management partners work to ensure that our sites are ready, as well as our processes have been reviewed and our team members have been rehearsed on actions that would be taken in the event that there is an interface fire or a wildfire that would risk our residents, our patients, or our clients. And throughout the spring, our team has participated in that activity in the event that there is wildfire activity. And of course, within the last 24 hours, we've seen some of that activity within the Kootenay boundary region up the Spokane Valley with a fire that temporarily closed Highway 6 between New Denver and Silverton. So our preparations are always necessary, with of course the hope that we have a summer where we're not impacted. Our residents, our clients, our patients are not impacted by fire, as well as our communities. And I have two more points, Chair, but I'll pause to see if there are any questions about those 2 points.
Are there any questions to this point? All right, I don't see anyone in chat, so you can go ahead with your next 2 items.
Okay. The next item is related to a news release that went out late last week with respect to exposure of tuberculosis in the community of Grand Forks. I just wanted to provide an update and inform this group, as well as any members of the public, that there continues to be no additional risk to the community itself. The spread of tuberculosis is quite low and quite hard to achieve. The Communicable Disease Unit identified a single case of tuberculosis in Grand Forks, which resulted in a large number of potentially exposed people. Our Communicable Disease Unit and public health teams have managed to identify the first group of people that we believe may be at risk of exposure, and contact with those individuals has already occurred. The team has worked really well to ensure that information, as well as availability of services, is made to members of the public. So my appreciation to local community officials, directors on this group who I was able to liaise with and provide information to. And finally, as was committed previously in the regional health district meetings, we were successful in having the first kidney care clinic in the city of Nelson earlier this month. There were 6 individuals who were seen as part of that clinic. The reports from those who attended were very positive, lots of appreciation for the ability to have the services offered closer to home. There will be an additional clinic offered this summer, as well as in the autumn. And Chair, that's my update for today.
Thank you, Glenn. Are there any questions on those 2 items? All right. I do not see any questions. Was it now that you wanted to address those other 2 items, Todd, or wait until we're addressing 7.6?
I could do it when we get to 7.6 if that's easiest.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we'll move into business. The first item is the board meeting format. And as you can see, there are challenges with the audio in Castlegar. So is there a recommendation here? I thought it was.
No, the chair was just basically letting the board know that the
Okay.
executive had made the call, that
Yeah, okay.
there's no point in trying to push the matter any further at this point. We'll wait till we've got better central resources to do it.
Okay. So are there any questions from directors on that item? All right. Thank you very much. So, new business. So chair's report. Thanks very much to the executive committee for taking the time to meet to discuss a few items, and one of them is the next item, which is our UBCM priorities, and discussing at length the challenges with the meeting location, recognizing that Castlegar would be more ideal for both districts. So we will be working towards that. And the other item is on July 3rd, there is a joint hospital board chairs and district chairs and IHA meeting, which I will be attending on behalf of the board. So I'm seeking approval from this board to travel to attend that meeting. Director Schmidt?
I would make a motion that the board approve your attendance with stipend and expenses paid.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Director Jackman. And thank you. Is there any discussion? Director Jackman?
So just to clarify, that's in Kelowna?
It is in Kelowna,
In
yes.
person at the health authority's request, as opposed to the Zoom meetings.
That's correct.
Right.
They've asked the six chairs, is it? I think 6 or 7 chairs to attend in person. All right. Thank you, Dawn. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks very much. And then the next item we've discussed already briefly is the UBCM priority topics. The executive committee had quite a lengthy discussion on and very good debate on what items there were. There were a number of them, but we narrowed it down to the ones that we do have more control over. So these are the items that we were going to bring forward. So recruitment and retention of healthcare workers. The retention of qualified workers is a key struggle in rural areas. Mental health and addictions supports. Many of the issues in communities are dealing with are a direct result of mental health and addiction, and increased supports around these issues is critically required. And access to healthcare services is limited by transit accessibility in rural areas. This issue presents itself not only for services in larger centers such as Kelowna, but also locally between Castle and Trail. So is there any discussion, or do you agree with the items that the executive committee is recommending for our UBCM meetings? Director Jackman.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are timely topics for the board as a whole and the executive. Question is if there are any municipalities going directly to Interior Health with concerns that they may want backup on, either through the executive board or through our board secretary, through Mr. Horn. I know in the past I've done that as a rural director, just sat with the CEO, had a conversation. So maybe this is the time to invite people to email you if they want any support.
Definitely. So that offer is open. if anyone wishes to set up meetings and wants to have support of the hospital board at those meetings. Thank you, Director Jackman. That's a good suggestion. I think Bill Castle may have something.
There's Lockwood.
Yeah, I saw Lockwood. Thank you.
Sorry.
And name. So Director Lockwood.
Thank you, Chair. With the recruitment and retention, I'm wondering now that, and I know this is a very touchy subject, but we're supposedly out of the pandemic, and there's not a lot of people that are up to date or have had their 5th or 6th shot that is working nowadays. Are we opening the doors back up for people to be rehired? And I realize you can answer this question, but I'm not sure if Todd or Lannon can answer this question, or if it's a question for the Minister of Health. Where are we going with this? Are we going to continue down where we're going to have immigrants come in and we hire them because they can show us a piece of paper that they were injected twice going forward?
So, Todd or Lannon, do you want to answer that?
I can answer that. Yes.
Thank you.
I don't necessarily have the answer to what the future holds, but it is very clear that the provincial medical health officer who continues to have this order enacted has given no indication that this is going to change. The vaccination requirements in this province for healthcare workers remains, and there, like I said, no indication.
Did you have a supplemental, Director Lockwood?
Yes, I would really like it if this. I don't know if this board is for that going forward. I realize that our IHA has to follow what the Ministry of Health, but if these meetings are with the Ministry of Health, is that we need to put some pressure on, that we need to have people get back to. We've got a lot of injuries out there that have not come to light completely yet, and we need to get people back to work and get people in healthy minds. So I'm wondering, how do we do that?
So what I'll do is I'll take the next question and we'll consider it, whether that is something that we as a board want to entertain. So I'll go to Director Main.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hewitt. I want to respond to just the offer of including or aligning municipal requests for meeting with the one that this board is doing, and I would say that Silverton definitely has concerns around recruitment and retention of healthcare staff, and I will inform my mayor that there is an opportunity to collaborate on that presentation or ask. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Lannon, you wanted to provide response to Director Lockwood?
Not a response specifically, Chair. Just some information that the Health District may not be aware of with respect to recruitment and retention that may inform your decision. It was announced recently by provincial government that there is now a significant amount of money now available to for recruitment and retention in rural areas, which includes upwards of $20,000 for new staff into rural areas, of which just about all communities in the Kootenay boundary are eligible for. The only community that is not currently is Trail. Every other community eligible for that, and the vast majority of our health staff groups. That's one that is available. And then there is also a retention bonus that is available to staff as well for maintaining their status in a regular position within the health authority. That is to the amount of $10,000 per year maximum, prorated to regular employees' work hours. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Landon. Have Director Davidoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Director Lockwood has raised a very interesting point. I think it would be appropriate that the board received a legal opinion on moving forward with a motion such as is being suggested. And we really need to understand in an in-camera meeting where we can have a fulsome discussion exactly what is happening out there in the legal front. We are aware of litigation that is currently occurring. And basically, I would strongly suggest that what we do is that we can address this issue as a board, but we do so in camera with a legal opinion so that we can have the fulsome conversation before we do anything in a public meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Davidoff. And Director Watson next. Yeah.
Good. I was thrown off by what Director Davidoff was asking for. I wasn't quite following that. What was my question? Oh, recruitment, retention. So I had spoken to, I don't know how it came up somewhere, but it wasn't news to me. But the state of our facilities, especially the more rural we are, and frankly, I was just at Trail, really glad to hear the parking lots being expanded and they'll be on permanent MRI. That's great news. I see how expensive it is. The retention and recruitment parts that's connected to the state of the facilities is they are so old and outdated that I've heard from professionals that Kootenay Boundary Region is not one they want to work in because of the state of our facilities. And I'm just being honest because IHA is here. I know we're part funders, so we generally don't like to fund more than we need to. So we're part of that problem. But I'm curious through to IHA, how much is that part of the consideration? You presented an FCI to us good 7 or 8 years ago, and we knew at that time that it was close to putting money into a sinking ship when it comes to the true cost of replacing everything and the level that we currently can with provincial and local funding. So just wondering where that's at. And I'll specifically reference the Victorian Health Centre in Caslow, because that was the one facility they were talking about, and they did reference Trail as well. That for many of the professionals, they were not interested in coming to this region because of the state of the facilities. So curious how that's being addressed at IHA. Thanks.
Maybe I'll start, and then Lannon, you can add to what I add to my response. So, Chair, directors, we've invested a lot lately at KBRH in particular with the new emergency department and the ambulatory care project that also extends greatly into the KBRH site. In areas like oncology, physiotherapy, into rehab as well as other areas. And then, in front of us today, as Director Watson stated, another big investment. There's a lot more to do. We've got more to go. We're not done yet with what we have in front of us today. In terms of recruitment and those impacts, Lannon, is there anything you can add into our response on that?
Thank you, Director Watson, because I hadn't heard that previously. I can appreciate, and we as a team talk about the impact of our facilities on team morale. So we know that it is part of the equation that will create an environment where people want to stay. Part of that is the camaraderie, the teamwork, the individuals who we work with. Part of it is having access to work that's meaningful and provides joy. part of it is having a facility and having the resources available to do the best work possible. So we do know that is part of the equation. And as Todd has said, we know that there is still work to be done. Within the last 2 years, the organization acknowledging that the funding decisions and the distribution of funds to support infrastructure had some gaps for smaller sites. We introduced a new process, small site funding, capital improvement funding, which allows for improvement projects to be addressed in a more timely manner in sites like the Victorian Health Centre in Gaslow and East Shore and other places of that size that will be maybe overlooked because of the larger needs at larger sites. So yes, aware, the best decisions possible are made to allocate the funds that we have available for the management of our infrastructure needs. And we certainly do consider updating, providing the structural and I'll say cosmetic improvements to the site in order to make them the best possible sites we can.
Supplemental chair?
Go ahead, Director Watson.
Yeah, thank you. And to IHA, Todd and Landon, just to know, like, I know that your funding is based on the province. I'm not in any way saying that you're deliberately not, having beautiful, shiny facilities. It's expensive. I get it. So I think when it comes to the actual item we're discussing, which is what the chair will bring forward at a minister's meeting, I think this is an important consideration in what we're advocating for. And it's not just for the West Kootenay Boundary Regional area, it is healthcare across the province. Like, everything is expensive, but when it comes down to how we understand asset management at a local level versus how it's being managed at the provincial level, there's a great disconnect between how we're caring for our assets. And I don't put that on IHA. Again, I know your funding is directly determined on what the province gives you, but I think our message to the province needs to be that it's not enough. And the state of our healthcare facilities is worse than our recreation facilities and some of our other local government owned services, because we need asset management planning and we don't have a lot of discretion there. And we also have to plan quite ahead of time outside of political cycles. So maybe they could mirror themselves after what they require of us when it comes to asset management. Maybe I'm just fluffing our feathers a bit. But I really think the province needs to recognize that they're not funding healthcare near enough. And I'm not talking operations here. I'm talking the facilities themselves, the equipment, all of that. And we know it's not going to go down anytime soon in terms of the needs. So that's my recommendation to be included in that item. Chair Hewitt, should you agree or the board agree?
Thank you. I'll continue through the speakers list. I've got Director Bogle and then Director Jackman.
Thank you very much, Chair Hewitt. Through the chair to Lannon and Todd, I'm wondering if you could possibly tell me what vaccinations/immunizations are currently required as a condition of employment with Interior Health. I know the list is probably fairly long.
Through the chair, I'm able to answer that question.
Okay,
So,
go ahead. Thank you, Landon.
Thank you, Chair. Director Bogle, the only immunization that is required is COVID.
Okay. Supplemental?
Go ahead, Director
What
Bogle.
about vaccinations?
Apologies, the terminology is often interchangeable.
Yeah.
That's the only one, COVID. There are other vaccinations, immunizations that we strongly recommend that people have, but are not a condition of employment.
Okay,
The only
thank you. I was
condition of
just curious
employment is
because my wife used to work for Interior Health, and there were certain things that she had to make sure that she was up to date on. So if it's
And that's
changed,
accurate.
thanks. I appreciate the information.
And if I may add, we certainly and we highly recommend certain other vaccinations in an effort to keep staff safe. So hepatitis, is one of them, as well as measles, mumps, and rubella. We want to ensure that people are current, therefore reducing their risk to get sick in the event that they're exposed. But there is currently only a single vaccination required, and that's COVID.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Jackman.
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting, the conversation about facility condition index, and when do you do something entirely new or different versus repairs. And it was stated by the director earlier that Ontario Health and all the health authorities are at the, say, mercy, I guess, or the discretion of the Treasury Board. But that doesn't mean there can't be more creative thinking. If you go to the Kootenay East Hospital District and look at the February and May minutes, there's conversations around Kimberley. There's a big building, there's interest by the municipality. Can they help somehow? What are the different options, partnerships, that maybe something can come out of that? It's not quite the conventional model. Of course, in the town where some of us are sitting right now in Nelson here, there's also the CBT plus private plus IHA leaseback model, which is maybe a one-off, but that's another model. That's another way to look at saying, well, you spend an awful lot of money with a little bit of money renovating and cosmetically trying to create as Landon says, a more attractive or more favorable environment for people to work in, where you can just spend the large money and be good for decades all in one. And there's another site, and I won't say a whole lot much about it, but there's other partners that might be saying, well, what if other arrangement of funding and partnership, a land just built something and you walk away from the old building? And those are models we need to talk about. There's some municipalities are talking about land for housing. Well, maybe they should talk about land for a health clinic and say, how can they mobilize that land? How can money be injected? And then how can Interior Health maybe lease that out of their $3 billion budget, as opposed to waiting on Treasury Board year after year after year to approve a substantial amount of money, so they're not spending double, triple per square foot to renovate, just like we're talking about temporary MRI, brand new temporary trailer, move the parking, move this, move that, where are the water lines, where are the sewer lines, and all of that expensive stuff. There's creative thinking out there. And maybe Caslow Victoria Health Center is an option for that. Maybe that old building should be something entirely else 10 years from now. And a new little health unit built somewhere else. I think we need to look at those approaches and talk to the minister with that kind of a framework in mind. Something entirely different.
Okay, thank you, Director Jackman. So I put my name on so we could get back. It wasn't intended to to go sideways and start to ask questions of Todd and Lan and like that. But they're important to people. But so that does say that recruitment and retention is a very key issue, and there are some points in there that can be included in the briefing note. Is the meeting being recorded so you'll be able to capture that information? And so there was no discussion on the other two items. Are those agreeable with the board? The other two items that the executive committee arrived at? So then, do we want a motion that these are the three items we bring forward? And I'm not sure whether, Director Jackman, whether we have enough information for the one that you just proposed.
No, I think it would be a site-specific opportunity.
Okay.
When if Todd and staff on the project site can identify a facility where patching and repairing is making very little sense, what else could possibly be done? And those sites just have to exist across the entire province where something else needs to be done, other than waiting.
All right. So then the recommendation would be to have staff prepare a briefing note and with these 3 items.
If I could, through the chair, I think it's that the board endorses the executive committee's items simply because we've already prepared and sent the briefing note because it was due last week.
Oh, okay.
So that's out the door. So at this point, it's already been done. I think it's a matter of just the board endorsing it.
Okay.
So moved to endorse.
Okay, moved by Director Jackman, seconded by Director Gibbs. For discussion?
And actually, yeah, I had a question getting back to Director Davidoff's request for an in-camera meeting to discuss vaccination requirements. Did he make a motion, or may I make a motion to request that?
We can do that after we do this one.
Okay.
If we can, please.
Thank you.
So that was moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Oh, sorry, I just saw your name in there, Director Main.
Okay.
Thank you. So.
It's okay.
So Director Davidoff, did you want to make that motion and that you would refer to?
I just put my name in chat to do that. And here I'd like the assistance of our CAO. I think the motion would read something like this, that staff prepare a report for the in-camera portion of our meeting for a discussion with respect to vaccination and vaccination requirements at this time. So something like that. So Stuart, if you could help me with that, that would be great.
So through the chair, if I could, I guess I'm just trying to find the risk that you're trying to identify for this board. Is the risk that you're going to make a political statement?
No.
Around something like vaccinations? I just don't understand the risk that we're preparing a report around addressing.
Yeah, so the risk right now is that my understanding is that, and again, I don't have anything to present here, but I understand there's litigation. There are other things happening right now around this issue involving IH and involving different employee cohorts. This matter, I do not believe, is resolved. I just like an update to the board before we make any type of a decision to go one way or another. At least we need to gain some understanding of the legal matters that are currently ongoing for us to be able to make an informed decision. And there's a question just popped into the chat about, is this our mandate? Well, the Hospital District Act still has not been amended, and guess what? Operations is still on the table. So I think that answer is easy. The government hasn't amended the Hospital District Act. We've been talking about this for 14 years. But the bottom line is that I think before we have a debate or discussion about the requirements for employment, we need to understand what the state of the litigation is, if it's still ongoing. My understanding is that it is ongoing. There's still active lawsuits happening.
So through the chair, you're looking for a research report on what's currently underway, to the extent it's publicly available.
Yes, please.
So, is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded. Discussion. So I have Director Watson in chat, and it might be, I'm not sure what it's related to, but I suspect it's this issue. Director Watson?
Yes, it's on the motion. I caution us over sending staff on a report finding mission where, as stated by the director, a lot of this is in litigation. A lot of this is currently in the courts, and access to enough information to give us is it safe for us or wise for us to make any kind of political advocacy regarding vaccines. I do not think it's a good use of our staff's time. Sure, the Hospital District Act has not been updated to address operational issues that we can consider. That doesn't, I see those as two different things. Asking our staff to provide a report on a current issue that's in front of the courts that we has no way in terms of that court outcome is not a good use of time. I think we need to either say, we want to advocate for vaccine mandates to be lifted, or we don't. There's no one that's going to sue us over that advocacy. It's an advocacy piece. Best practices on vaccines would be more of the fact-finding mission we could use to inform our decision, more so than court decisions that are going to be years out. So I don't support this motion, mostly because I do not think it's a good use of staff time, and it's not going to give us the info relevant to whether or not we advocate for vaccine mandates to be there or not there.
Director Watson, is there any further discussion? Director Jackman.
Sure, thank you. There's conversation about something being in camera. If it's public information being compiled, it's not an in-camera topic. Anything beyond that would be speculation, which our staff should not be in that business. So if there's a report compiled, whether or not this passes, it would definitely just simply be to an open meeting. Just be a summary of what public information updates have been given by the ministry and the employers.
Yeah, and I would, oh, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I would remove the in-camera if the seconder would agree to that. We just need a report on this stuff so that we're aware of what's going on out there before we take a stand on anything. So that I would be okay with that.
Seconder, please.
All right, Director Schmidt, next.
I speak against the motion. And one thing that I think might be worthwhile is for this board to write the Chief Medical Health Officer of the province, noting that our number one issue that we're speaking to IHA about is healthcare workers and retention of those workers in this particular area. What's her thoughts on that? And is there going to be any change in her current position? That would give us an update, and we wouldn't have to spend a lot of staff time just to let her.
And this discussion is being precipitated by the items that we're going to request a meeting at UBCM about. So whether this discussion point is actually included in that is more so the point. I think if we're willing to do that and go and speak to that directly, if we get a meeting, that's one thing for, whether we do want to take that stance. But we've got a motion that's duly moved and seconded. Thank you. And so I'll take Director Page next.
I feel like I'm off the track based on what you just said, but through the chair to Director Schmick, AKBLG had just received a response from our UBCM request around recruitment last year from the Ministry of Health, and we are intending to send that out to the entire membership. And it's quite detailed from Minister Dix, all around retention and rural context and exactly what's going on in our area. So I think it will answer any questions we would then ask. So I would say not duplicate that work, and I'll try and get you guys that within the next week. That was the intent already. And I speak against the motion.
Thank you, Director Page. All right. So I don't see anyone else in chat, so I'm going to call the question, and rather than having a whole sea of hands perhaps go up, I'm going to poll each director. I think that it will end up there anyhow, I believe. So Director Jackman.
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay, Director Watson?
Opposed.
Thank you. Actually, I should clarify, does anyone wish the motion to be read again? Okay, well, if you could, please, Christine?
That staff prepare a research report for a board discussion in respect to vaccination requirements is what I would capture.
Director Davidoff, does that capture it?
That's close enough, Chair.
Okay,
And ongoing litigation, I would suggest at the end, capture what Director Davidoff was looking
okay,
for.
and with the inclusion of and ongoing litigation. All right, Director Schmidt. Director Newell, I don't believe joined the meeting. Director Cunningham? No. Director Papa?
Opposed.
You? We have Director Davidoff.
In favor.
Director Hanegraaff is not here. Director Weatherhead? Director Weatherhead, you want to just do a thumbs up or thumbs down for you opposed? Director Bogle?
Opposed.
And I am opposed. Director McLaren-Cole?
Opposed.
Director Page?
Opposed.
Director Paisley? Or a representative from New Denver? Here, Director Lockwood?
With Page saying what he said, I'm opposed to this motion now. Thank you.
Director Main?
I'm opposed.
Director Buller?
I'm opposed, please.
Director Grieve?
Opposed.
Director Worley? Not in attendance. Director McGregor? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Opposed.
Thank you. Director Weiss?
She's muted.
Okay. Director Weiss, are you able to unmute?
Opposed.
Okay, thank you. Director Gibbs?
In light of the AKBLG report, I'm opposed.
Director Wenman?
Opposed.
Director Baker or representative from Grand Forks? Director McLean?
Opposed.
You, Director Dunson? And Director Berrio?
Opposed.
Director Wilsey is replacing Dunstan.
Oh, okay, sorry. Director Wilsey?
Opposed.
You. Director Weaver?
Opposed.
Director Martin?
Opposed.
And Director Marino?
Opposed.
All right, so that motion fails. All right, so then we will move on to the capital funding request from the Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital District for the MRI project. So there's the staff recommendation. The recommendation is that staff prepare an expenditure bylaw for the Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital, KBRH, Magnetic Residence Imaging Expansion Project, and a financial plan amending bylaw to the West Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital District bylaw for 2024 for board consideration.
Could I move that with the inclusion of an expenditure bylaw in the amount of $13.945 million? So move.
Okay, and
945 million, 13,945,000.
Okay. All right, so moved by Director Jackman.
Second, Frank.
Okay. Thank you. That's seconded. Any discussion? Oh,
So through the chair, just because of the dollar amount, it's obviously if mid-year we can do the financial plan amendment, but the financial plan amendment will likely keep to just 2024. There's no requirement for a 5-year financial plan. We'll take the cash flow amount that has been presented in the letter, which we could probably cover temporarily by reserves, while the board makes a decision as to whether you wanted to borrow for a portion, all of it, how you wanted to split it up. Because the cash flow is set out by year, you actually have a good opportunity to even take a look at what the request is in 2025 from a financial point. And you could even, if it's a low request, maybe taxation stays the same. There's a lot of options that you've got because of that cash flow map that was presented in the letter by Todd. So I think it's really advantageous to not commit to that funding portion yet. You don't necessarily need to do the expense bylaw, which allows IHA to bill and us to pay, but you don't necessarily have to say which bucket it has to come from.
and which this does not state, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Director Watson?
Yeah, I think Stuart covered it. I was just going to ask about the borrowing process or the funding process, given that this is going to be a multi-year project. It's not all in one financial, it's not all in one budget year. So I think he addressed all the different ways we can do this. And I really like that we can probably look at how IHA is figuring it and do a similar kind of match on our end in terms of what we piecemeal. So Stuart's got it. I support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Not seeing anyone opposed, so that motion passes. And then we have a discussion item, aging equipment in local hospitals, and this was brought forward by a director. I forget which director it was who had asked that item to be included.
I'm not sure. It was a part of the UBCM priorities discussion.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right.
Richard Martin. It could have been.
It could have been. All right. Was it you, Director Martin, who had brought this item forward at our executive committee meeting?
No, I did not.
Yeah, I think it was me regarding the CT scan and things.
Oh, great. All right. So go ahead then.
Yeah, in discussions that I've had with staff at Boundary Hospital, particularly the CT scanner is aging and not doing well. Obviously, the doctors want more funding for rural communities. They feel that, the bigger centers are getting more money. And I believe Boundary Hospital is like number 15 on the list for that. But really, in terms of volume, other than Revelstoke, they should really get one. I know it's challenging with budgets, but I just thought that it should be brought up that, the equipment is really deteriorating. We're constantly struggling to find the funding and get the equipment. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other comments? It is questions. It is definitely recognized from our earlier discussions that there is, and we've known for a long time, there's an infrastructure deficit. Sorry, I did see you, Director Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe I also brought this up at our executive meeting. Our CAT scan at the Kootenay Lake Hospital and the one at the Kootenay Boundary Hospital are fairly old. And I know the one in the Kootenay Lake Hospital had problems and maintenance problems, etc. So the two CAT scans at our regional hospital in Trail and the one in Nelson are very aged, and we should be considering possible replacement.
And then I have Director Lockwood.
Thank
And then
you.
I'll go to you, Todd.
Thank you. And I'm good if you want Todd to respond first. Would you like that?
Well, I was just thinking maybe you have something else that he might be wanting to answer as well.
Okay. Thank you. And through the chair to possibly Todd. I'm just wondering, as I've sat here at this table for a few years, I've never heard, I don't remember hearing how it's divided up throughout IHA, the monies that is brought in for healthcare. Is there any way that simplistically that you can be able to say, oh, well, the East and West Kootenays gets this percentage out of 100% or something like that? Is there any way that you can tell us what we look at getting, or is it just whatever the board at the IHA itself decides?
Sure. Maybe what I'll start off is maybe talking about CT in particular. Back in January when we presented our funding request letter, I did verbally note at that time. So, but I'll give a reminder here now. In terms of the CT scanners at both KBRH and KLH, they are approaching end of life. Our plans for the next 2 years are to change them both out. Likely KBRH in 25-26, followed by KLH in 26-27. They are expensive items. $4 million a piece ish, depending on kind of what we need for installs, would be the ballpark price on them. And to the earlier question, in terms of expanding our CT service to other sites, we have started to develop with an Interior Health a rural CT plan that looks at where it would make sense if we could find the dollars to support it to expand the number of CT scanners to more rural communities, Grand Forks, Revelstoke, Golden, and our sites that are identified. So there is work happening on that front. But in terms of our two workforce CTs that we have currently in the Kootenay Boundary region, they're both due for replacement. Expect one in each of the next 2 years. To the Director Lockwood's last question, directors, I know in the past I've tried to explain on how we do our capital prioritization, and I can do an update on that maybe at a coming meeting. But really, in a nutshell, how we do it when we get our envelope of funding available to us from the ministry for those projects that are in what we call our routine capital, really items that are under $5 million, is we look throughout the health authority on a year-to-year basis on where our greatest needs are for maintaining our facilities, for maintaining our service, and that's kind of where we go. We go through a prioritization process to address the areas of greatest need. We don't take a population-based approach and say 10% goes to Kootenay Boundary, 10% goes to East Kootenay. That is not how we look at it. One of the commitments, Chair and Directors, under our MOU with all 7 RHDs is Interior Health's commitment to take a longer view of our planning and to engage more with RHTs and sooner in our capital process. So that will you'll see some information that will be bringing much more granular than we've had in the past coming up in the fall and in October. I can guarantee you that 2 items you'll see on those lists are the 2 CTs I just mentioned. But in terms of just building the engagement, building the awareness, giving RHDs the ability to do more detailed, more granular planning in terms of taxation versus reserve setting. That is one of the commitments we have made, and we're going to be honoring and living up to. It'll be early days, so I think there'll be some learnings coming from both of us as we walk through that. But look forward to that, us providing that information for the first time in this new format, likely in October. And Chair Hewitt, I know you mentioned the IH Chairs meeting happening in early July 3rd, I think it is. There'll be more coming to all 7 chairs at that meeting as well.
Thank you. Did you have a supplemental, Director Lockwood?
No, but I really appreciate that if we have, because we have a lot of new people around the table, and I think that October, that would be really well received. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you. I am going to ask a question of Interior Health, our guests today. Having been a part of the Capital Under 100,000 meeting, what I found curious is that the chairs were invited to that meeting, but we were not allowed to have any input at that meeting. It essentially was between Interior Health and the foundations. So essentially seeking partners to help fund the projects. So I'm just curious, for some of the directors, I think we need to maybe take a step back and see how can we advocate for our facilities. Because by that time, it's already gone through all the hoops and gotten to you for the capital requests to, through Treasury Board. If the community would like to see something happen, how do we, who do we approach, and how do we approach getting something on the list if we say, the community has identified this as a need for their community, because who knows it better but the elected officials in those areas? How do we go about that?
And maybe I'll start, and then we can kind of take it from there. So in terms of just the under 100K capital, this board having a representative at those prioritization meetings is something we've been doing for. Director Popoff probably could give the date off the top of his head, but a better part of a decade. I think the initial intent was, just to kind of understand on how we do it, and how we build in the ability for every site to, in essence, bring forward their needs and then come up with that. What are the greatest needs that we need to fund? I think not being at that meeting lately myself, but knowing that you've been there, ability to ask questions has always been kind of on the table. To take it to that next step on how to bring items forward. I think that's where working with our Lannon and his team. I don't think. I don't think where you're to your point, the chair is. It's probably going to be more around new services versus keeping the wheels turning, which is where the bulk of those dollars go. One of the reasons why we do involve foundations is their ability to help us in this area, and they're very keen when it is a new service or that. They have the ability to attract donors for when new services are possible. Lannon, is there anything that you would like to add or correct in my mumbling there?
Through the chair, nothing to correct. I think there's accuracy in that, and I would be a great place of contact. I think there are always options as well. There are the foundations who participate in that process. work with the foundation leads is also another avenue to advocate for community interest and want. I believe that the decisions that are made are made using the best information that we have available based on need of service, aging and outdated equipment that requires replacement. But Chair, I would be open to having conversation with members of the RHD or communities reaching out to ask about or to provide recommendations. And I think it is important, much like the earlier discussion, that the need often outstrips what our supply is of cash available to fund all of the asks that end up being placed on the list.
Thank you. And Director Pawlak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just going back in memory. Many years ago, when I was vice chair of the board, I attended all of those meetings for anything under $1,000, and that was basically for information purposes. Bring the information back to the board, to what's happening and what items were actually taken off the list. And foundations at that time were part of this whole process. And I don't know what it morphed into now. I think Todd gave us a little bit of a background on it, but that was the initial intent of having the vice chair at those meetings.
Thank you, Director Pawlak. Great. Okay. Now we are on to accounts payable. So the accounts payable summary for May 2024 has been received. And then 7.6, Interior Health Authority Capital Projects and Planning Status Report. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll share my screen here quickly. Go there. Directors, in this report, there's two items that I need to highlight for you. They're both HVAC, heating, ventilation related, where as we're moving through the design on these two projects, we're having budget pressures. The first one is at KBRH in Trail, replacing two of the air supply fans. It was a very healthy budget to begin with, a little over $3.2 million, which would be $1.3 million in terms of a 40% contribution from the board. We're at the stage where we've had a significant amount of design work done, as well as costing by independent quantity surveyors to see, kind of how we're doing compared to what we have in place. We're still working through that process, but need to create the awareness, ring the alarm bell per se on this project. We're looking at alternatives right now, but just wanting to advise the board that we're having budget pressures on this one, and there'll be more to come at future meetings. We have a similar pressure on an HVAC project in Grand Forks at Boundary Hospital. It is an air handling unit that covers a significant part of the building, including the lab and X-ray areas, which are heat generators to begin with in terms of the services we provide there. Similar, we're working through the design. Our initial costings as we move through it are indicating a pressure on our budget, which is a little over $641,000. $256,000 would be the RHD 40% share contribution that we have in place on this one. Similarly, more work happening on our end, but just looking to create the awareness on the board that we're having pressures in terms of coming in on our budget based on the work as we now move into the more detailed stage on these two projects. Chair, that was the two items that I wanted to highlight, but open to any questions on these two items or any of the other items in the report.
Are there any questions, Director David? Director Jackman.
Sure, thank you. I didn't put my name in chat because I'm on the wrong screen here. Through the chair to Todd again, thanks. The cash flow information is great, and especially bigger projects, there's still gaps, and I maybe always come across too critical, but there's 7 of the projects without a cash flow projection whatsoever in terms of the major amount of money. 2 of them are pretty big around the new primary care facility in Nelson, because there's 11.5 and 7 million, which are going to be spent in 2024, I think, if they can open January 5th. Again, it's nice to be able to point to people and show them, here's how your money's being spent. You have so many people critical of what's being spent, what taxes are going towards. It's just nice to say, here's what's being spent. Tell me what you didn't want. And so the more complete the reports are, the better. But I noticed for 2024, when I add up the bigger ones, there's very, very little showing that would be expended in 2024, whereas in 2025, there's 21 million plus, just larger in 2026, 13 million. So we need those big numbers to do our forecasting and borrowing and discussions on how and when we take money out of somebody's back pocket to put in your reserve. But just if those half a dozen other gaps can be filled, then it's a complete picture. And so I really like the trend. We're getting better data. I think better cash flows. There's just a few gaps.
Sure, if I could respond to that. I take your point. Thank you. I take your point, Director Jackman. Definitely the two projects tied to the Nelson project where the RHD is contributing. There should be cash flows in those documents, and for our next report, I'll be sure that those are updated correctly. And I think your assumption is very correct that based on that project being completed this year, there'll be cash flow out on those substantially in 24. Some will stagger into 25, but I would say the lion's share on both the tenant improvements and the equipment will happen in the 24 year.
That's supplemental?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I have Director Lockwood.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm struggling that we do procurement and then we go way over budget. When are we going to hold the ones that have said it's gonna cost us much to their feet to the fire? Like, I'm not sure what has made it go over budget, because that's not knowledge to us. But when a procurement's done, that's what we're expecting to pay. And this happens more times than not, that we're always asked for more money after the fact. So I'm really concerned that we need to figure out how we hold the jobs to what they said they were going to do the job for. I don't know if there's any knowledge in that.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. To respond to that, so on those two projects in particular, we definitely identified the need using our own in-house estimators and some external quantity surveyors. We came up with what we thought would be reasonable budgets for both, including some contingency. And then that information, those amounts, is what went through into our capital budget and formed the initial request to this board for 40%. Once it was approved, that's kind of when we started the detailed design, bringing in procuring the engineers and architects, having them come look at the site, look at the equipment, and get that more detailed information. On these two projects, our initial high-level estimates, without actually taking it apart, is where we're at the stage where, okay, our initial estimates were off based on the technical experts that have come in, rolled up their sleeves, and we spent $50,000-$60,000 on engineers and architects to tell us what we need to do in order to meet the goals of the project. I think it's a function of, again, working in older buildings, working with older equipment, and just doing that more granular work is where we're at now. Our hope is always not to have to come back to any RHD for an increase on a project. But sometimes there's only so far we can go in terms of coming up with a project budget. And there are times on some projects where we actually ask for planning dollars so that we can get further along and actually get some money in place so that we can take that design work to a more granular state to come up with a second request for the full scope. We don't do that all the time, but that's kind of how we end up in the situation like we have with these two. Hindsight's always a good mirror in KBRH in particular. A large budget at 3.3 million. Maybe we should have done that. Asked for 100,000 for planning so that we could actually get not just internal estimators and quantity surveyors, but get those real technical experts involved, and then come for the final project. That's the nutshell.
Thank you for the question, Director Lockwood. Any further questions for Todd?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director.
Okay, thank you. Our last item is the 2022 audited financial statements. Did you want to speak to this at all, Stuart?
Sure. Through the chair, I can assure you that 2022 is not a typo.
Yeah.
So because the regional hospital district can't enter into agreements on its own because it's not considered an entity, it's sort of an amalgamation of the two regional districts, we consider the hospital district audit as part of the regional district of Central Kootenay RFP. When we went out to get a new auditor last year, 2 years ago already, we had completed the RDCK audit. We hadn't completed the hospital district audit for 2022 yet. So we were in the middle of that RFP, changed auditors, and you can imagine the thrill of our old auditor really wanting to get this work done for us or even communicate with our new auditor. So that's the reason for the delay. No other reason, but the communication of our old auditor was subpar and took that long for that information to get over to our new auditor so they could do the work. So I do envision the 2023 audit coming relatively quickly, should the board approve this today.
Thank you for letting us know, Director Lockwood, and go ahead, Director Jackman.
I just moved the recommendation on the agenda.
Okay. So moved by Director Jackman. By Director Gibbs. Any discussion? Actually, I do want to ask a question. Is there any challenge that you could make for, because as a professional, the auditor, former auditor, shouldn't have held your information hostage. That, to me, is totally inappropriate.
Yeah, through the chair, I guess it's something we could, from a professional designation standpoint in the Institute, we could take a look at something along those lines. I don't know the details of that. It's something that Yev's been working on recently, and even Heather, in terms of where that sat with specifics. I could get more detail on it to see what, if it was something where they were being deliberate about it or just non-responsive.
Right.
At the same time, I'm just glad that we've moved on from our
Reinforces the decision.
Yeah.
All right. So there's no questions. I will call the question. Anyone opposed? All right. That motion passes. And that brings us to public time. Are there any members of the public that would like to ask a question? If you would like to, you can just go ahead and unmute and ask your question. I'll ask another time. Are there any questions from the public? Don't want to miss anyone. So I'm seeing no one and hearing no one. So our next meeting is October 23rd. If you haven't received your invitation or your Zoom link, you can please reach out, but put it in your calendars. And so I'll take a motion to adjourn then at 7:40. Sure. By Director Jackman. And thanks everyone. This meeting went far smoother than the last one. Thank you all for using chat. I'm sorry if I've missed a few of you when watching it. I've tried to get everybody. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.